I've noticed a trend in small businesses and craft distilleries included. It's a tendency to not view yourself as real until you're doing the same style marketing things that the big boy companies are doing. I'm Daniel Whittington. I'm Chancellor of Wizard Academy and Whiskey Marketing School. We're going to talk about this. We're going to drink a little Angel's Envy Triple Oak. Sometimes small businesses make this mistake because they're small, sometimes people feel this way because they're small and they have the ability to grow into a big company that does big mass media marketing things, but they're just not there yet. And they feel like someday I'll be real. But sometimes they're not the kind of company who should be doing big mass media marketing, and they still feel like they're not really real. And instead of accepting that limitation that their business is not designed for mass media, they keep pushing and fighting against it and end up harming themselves or wiping themselves out in the process. For the purposes of this conversation, I am specifically not talking about the small bit will grow into mass media ability. I am talking about the businesses who are never designed for true mass media marketing. And I'm going to focus on craft distilleries. Here's a story I've seen over and over. And that is, you're a craft distillery. You start small, you do everything right, you get the right equipment, you train your people, you get the education, you do the process correctly, your mashes are real and your fermentations are great and your cuts are good and you get really high quality barrels and you build a tasting room and you do everything right. You train your people and you position yourself for luck. That just something to, while doing the hard work, right? Because I believe luck is usually a result of hard work. And then every once in a while it happens, you get a whole bunch of gold medals and retailers start wanting your products and you build a fan base and it kind of explodes and they start moving things to retail and more bars want you and then get on somebody's top 10 list like Forbes or something. People start talking about you and holy cow. And this is the point at which you start to feel like you're not real unless you start doing campaigns like Johnny Walker or Wild Turkey or these other big boy brands, Diageo owned or Pernod. And except the brands you're thinking of all have the ability to blow a 6-figure marketing budget on an oops. And you don't. Or you get investors. And the investors decide, our job as investors is to take this small craft distillery and make them real. And they start forcing a craft distillery into all these boxes of real big brand marketing. Except that's not how craft communities grow. That's not how small craft distilleries grow. At one point I had a distillery, I was looking at radio, and if I work with large clients as well as small ones, and I can work with large radio campaigns, multi-6-figure radio campaigns. But when I was looking at a craft distillery for the first time and realizing, man, just to put you on the radio in your area, which doesn't make any sense, but even if I did, like $300,000-$400,000 because of the city that they're next to. That's insane. They should never spend that kind of money on radio for that, but it works really well for trades and service companies. Terrible idea for a craft distillery, right? And then if I tried to do the same thing in mass media, radio and TV and so on, big magazines, in all the places that are whiskeys available across the market, now we're talking like a $2 million marketing budget. That's insane for a large company should not do that, let alone a craft distillery. But they chase it, and they chase it in little ways like, well, we need an agency so that we're real, or we need a marketing director, full-time marketing department, or we need, and they start, and these people don't know how to handle craft grassroots, and it sometimes destroys the distillery completely. At minimum, it sets them back on a path of true success. And I'm going to talk more about this, but first let's try this Angel's Envy. I saw this as Triple Oak Angel's Envy, and I was curious. I looked at the front bottle. It's pretty, just like all the Angel's Envy bottles. I like the kind of blue contrasty vibe going on over here. But it's 3 different kinds of oak. So they say they start it just like all of their stuff. They start it as a bourbon. So it's just a Kentucky bourbon to start with. And then they say they finish it in a mix of Hungarian, Chinkopin, and French oak barrels. Now, they say they blend the Hungarian, Chinkopin, and French oak barrels toasted. I do not know if they mean they put it into those 3 barrels and then they blend it, or if they're literally assembling barrels from a mix of staves of those 3 types of oak. I couldn't figure out the answer to that question in my cursory overlook, and I just like to do first impressions on these anyway, but it's kind of nerdy to have fun to have this thing. I mean, that's other Quercus Alber and Quercus Robur are the most common oak species aged in American and Scotch and world whiskeys, right? That's French oak and American oak. And, but this has 2 other ones, which is Chinkopin, which is Quercus Muhlenbergi, for lack of, I'm probably getting that wrong. That's the Chinkopin, and that's a North American oak. And then the Quercus Frenetto, which is Hungarian oak, which is found in like Turkey and, yeah, Europe, Southeastern Europe. Anyway. On the nose, super classic bourbon. That same spicy cherry, more spicy cherry than dark chocolate candied cherries, but like cherry with some zesty pepper spice in the nose. I'm guessing that's the various oaks spice. Soft, sweet, candied, black pepper, maraschino cherry. It's very nice. Not a lot of grain. It's got time, age. It drinks very soft. If you're expecting a really dry tannic, you're not going to get it in this one. It still has that same Angel's Envy kind of candied bourbon, soft, sweet corn. Little bit dry on the very, very end of the finish. I want more of the spice that was in the nose to be in the palate. Really like the nose a lot. All right, as I go and spread it, it does this thing where it comes in sweet and then goes, ring, gets kind of tangy and tannic at the end. I'm guessing that's the various kinds of oak spice. I have no idea what Chinkopin is adding to the picture on this one. Toasted walnut, dried waxy walnut is in here. It's interesting. It's a good one. I mean, there's no question that Angel's Envy whiskey is really good whiskey, so that's not a surprise. But yeah, I think I prefer the classic Angel's Envy to this one, but this is an interesting, like, slight varietal of Angel's Envy. So, this tendency to not feel real unless you're doing what big boys are doing, in however you define that. I experienced it in music as a musician for my music career, and that was, I remember in the early days, like, you weren't real until you got a record deal from a real record company. And I remember I finally got a real record deal with a band and a real record company. And we went on tour in like stadiums and theaters. And I was like, I made it. I'm real now. It was only in retrospect, looking back after it blew up the band and put us in debt. And it did not end well for various reasons. But I started doing solo tours at one point. Out of a Camry and just doing house concerts. And I ran the math, and at one point, I was clearing close to 6 figures of income off of house concert tours because my expenses were so low and all the money just went straight into my pocket. Whereas in the era where I was in a record deal and a record label and touring the world in stadiums, I was just racking up credit card debt and trying to figure out how to eat. But yet, you go to your family reunion and they're like, where are you playing these days? Oh, I'm playing house concerts. Oh, so like no real rock shows? And then, but if I go back and like, oh yeah, I played in a stadium for 20,000 people, they're like, oh, he must be real. Oh, what a false marker that is. What a false marker. The difference between actually succeeding and the trappings of success. I love mass media, and I've built campaigns for mass media, and it's fun. But there's something really special about the chance to get to come up with a marketing strategy for a brand that does not belong in mass media and to help them truly succeed. And I've found that in that job, one of your primary roles as a consultant is to give them courage and remind them of who they are. that just because they don't have meetings with a 30-person agency, and just because blah, 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 they're on the cover of every magazine and they don't have big TV campaigns, does not mean that they're not real or not extremely successful in the real definition of what it means to be successful in life. If that's you, and by the way, that is a lot of your job as a consultant, give those people courage, make them feel seen. If that's you, don't imagine that what you're doing isn't real until it looks like what big corporate companies are doing. That's not true. Spend the time to figure out the impact you want to have and how you want to accomplish it, and then view those accomplishments as the markers of your success, regardless of how it looks on paper. Maybe the P&L. It should look good on the P&L. That's way more powerful and way more real. I think that's what drew me first to Wizard Academy and the Wizard of Ads partners when I started consulting for businesses, is that we're the group of misfit toys, right? And so many craft distilleries are a home of misfit toys. And I love that about us. So keep up the good fight. I hope that's helpful. And I'm really glad you're here. Cheers. If you're one of the misfit toys, then like and subscribe to this channel. If you're one of the big boy marketing companies, then I'm just kidding.